Peace and love, family. Welcome to another powerful discussion with your sister, Dr. Maat. You see, family, tonight we will be talking about the life and the legacy of Paul Robeson. I always say Robeson, but because of that Robe, Robeson, but it looks like it's Robeson, right? But we say Robeson. Yeah, I guess that's that Baltimore accent. But peace and love to your family. Thank you so much for tuning in. But before we get tonight's discussion started. Before we get tonight's discussion started, family, I have a few announcements to make. You see it on the screen, family. Black History Month is coming. Black History Month is coming, but we call it Black History Month. But Black History is 365 days a year, right? It's 24/7 over here, 365 days a year, right? So we celebrate Black History all day, every day. I say, but anyway, formally it's formally called Black History Month in February. And so, family, join me at the annual Black History Month celebration by INSA African Creations. The founder is Sister Marjorie Nicole. She has a beautiful tradition here in Baltimore where she has established a Black History Month celebration, and it's going to be off the chain, family. It's going to be on September, Sunday, February the 19th from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. at the St. Matthew's Church located at 5401 Lock Raven Boulevard in Baltimore, Maryland, 21239. Okay. And so look at this. It's going to be an African vendor marketplace. And family, I'm going to tell you, I attended what was just now, Kwanzaa event, and she had a marketplace that was off the chain. Like, I spent so much money going from vendor to vendor. I bought some earrings. I think I bought like 2 or 3 pair of earrings. I brought some leather patches. I brought all kinds of stuff, family. So make sure that you come on out on Sunday, February the 19th from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. at the St. Matthew's Church. It's going to be, a host there. I'm going to give a lecture. It's going to be off the chain, family. So make sure that you are in the building. Also, family, I want you to join us on Mother's Day. It's going to be a beautiful Mother's Day lunch, okay? MOM, missing our mothers, grandmothers, and aunts. So if your mother or your grandmother, your auntie transition, come on out here to this luncheon as Sister Mujay. I call her Mujay. I know you see Marjorie on the slide, but I mean on the flyer, but I call her Sister Mujay. That's her name that she received from her ethnicity in Sierra Leone. And so anyway, that's her name, Mujay. That's the name they gave her. And so she had this vision to create a Mother's Day luncheon for people whose mothers and grandmothers and aunties have transitioned. And this is going to be a safe space for you to come, for you to honor your mom, for you to honor your grandmother, for you to honor your auntie. And it's going to be beautiful, family. Make sure that you come on out. General admission is $75. You're looking like, why is it $75? It's a luncheon. Okay. It's a luncheon that's going to be catered, right? Photos, DJ, mimosas, all of this sorts of stuff costs. These things cost money. And so come on out, family. And we're also going to have like an ancestral shrine up. So we want you to bring something of your mother and your grandmother and your auntie. We're going to pour libations. We're going to have African drumming. We're going to dance. We're going to shout. We're going to scream. We're going to cry. We're going to hug. We're going to do all of those sorts of things. So make sure, family, that you're in the building on Mother's Day, May the 14th from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. at St. Matthew's Church located at 5401 Lock Raven Boulevard. Okay. So make sure, family, that visit INSA. I always say NSAA, but it's INSA Creations, NSAA Creations at gmail.com. Shoot her an email. Tell her that you were on Dr. Maat's platform and you heard about these events that are coming up. If you're in the DMV, family, if you're in the DMV area, family, make sure that you're in the building, okay, to support these types of events. Now, family, I got to shout out to my audience family that's in the building, okay? Before we get started, I see we have Brother Shango, 67, is in the building. Melanated Diasporan is in the building. Queen Mother, a Beautiful Mind, is in the building. Our warrior, I call him the flyest RBG dress warrior, right, in the community. Brother Davon Teet is in the building. I see Brother Ronald Maurice is in the building. I see Anthony Holly. I see the Sankofa. What's that say? Sankofa Face Yoga is in the building. I see Lalo Love is in the building. B1 for Life is in the building. Peace and love to you. And I see Truth to Power Millions is in the building. And he says Black African Power. All right, family. So we're going to go ahead and get tonight's discussion started. I'm super duper excited, about tonight. A lot of us don't talk about, Paul Robeson. Like nobody really talks about this brother. Like in the month of January, we talked about Khalid Muhammad, right? We talked about, Dr. John Henry Clark. We talked about Dr. Amos Wilson. Some people talked about Dr. King, Patrice Lumumba. So all of those people, but nobody paid homage to this great ancestor, Paul Robeson, right? Who was, born in 1898. He was actually born on April the 9th, 1898. Okay. So he would be a contemporary of people like, Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois and even the Honorable Marcus Garvey, right? He would be a contemporary of them, right? Check. And, and I'm not saying that he was, grown, because you're talking about 1898. Tuskegee was founded, I think, in 1880 or something like that. So Booker T was grown. But Paul Robeson was born. You get what I'm saying? Born into that era and came up, during that particular era. He was a youngster, and they were, older, but he came up in that era, right? All the way through. He died on January the 23rd, 1976. So today is his transition day. Ashe. And so we give thanks for the life and legacy of Paul Robeson. We give thanks for that brother. Okay, so he passed in 1976 on January the 23rd. But if you look at his life, he lived to be 78 years old. But look at the time periods, family, that he lived through from 1898 to 1976. So he remember, we got emancipated in 1863. So he lived through the Jim Crow period, right? He was around for World War I and World War II and the Vietnam War, right? So he experienced, racial segregation and all of these things that we read about. Ashe. He also experienced the civil rights movement and the Black Power movement, right? So he lived through these eras that we study. And it says online that he was an American bass baritone, concert artist. He was a stage and film actor. He was a professional football player. He was an activist who became famous both for his cultural accomplishments and for his political stances. And so, family, without further ado, we got to get into, Paul Robeson. Got to get into this brother. So I'm going to share my screen and my music. I want to play the Libation song before we get started. Family, take a moment out to thumb up this video, thumb it up and share the video. Let people know that I'm live. Let people know that I'm live, family. Let them know. If you're on Twitter, tweet the link. If you're on Facebook, post the link and let them know that I'm live. But I got to play the Libation song written by Amadei the Apostle, who he gives praise and honor to our ancestor. And I did it for all of the other greats. So I gotta do it for Paul Robeson. Here we go, family.
The elders are our living ancestors. They are our direct connection to the African spirit and way. And we distinguish between elders and those who are simply older, whose menticide has driven some of us into a treasonous arrogance. Those who are truly elders are our seasoned visionaries. They are our proven warrior servant workers. They are those who uncompromisingly speak to what needs to be done. And this is a life of revolutionary sovereignty seeking experience. They hold our vision closer to their hearts because they are us on the horizon of return.
Put your lighters up high, wave around side by side. We gon' light up the sky where the ancestors ride. For the nights that we cry, but tonight we take pride, cause the spirit never dies. So through us, they alive. Put your lighters up high, wave around side by side. We gon' light up the sky where the ancestors ride. For the nights that we cry, but tonight we take pride, cause the spirit never dies. We gon' celebrate their lives. Yo, I wonder if we seen the elders rise from the grave and they seen us today. What would they say? Envision as you see my words glide from the page. I imagine they would be so ashamed of our ways. We in the same position, maybe because we ain't listen. We like the discipline for the tunes they was spitting. Or maybe this was karma, cause we ain't show them honor. Word to Dr. Ben, we should have held them down stronger. Call it how I see it, maybe that was signs from Jesus. A metaphor on how we gon' treat our own leaders. They came here to teach us and we cheered from the bleachers. But when it's time to ride, we turn our backs when they need us. We pour libations, but we form our own nation. I pray we wake up and see the time we was wasting. We even seen Eliza lay the blueprint for black power. Peace to the scholars like Dr. Wilson and Tony Brown. Light us up high, wave around side by side. We gon' light up the sky where the ancestors ride. For the nights that we cry, but tonight we take pride, cause the spirit never dies. So through us, they alive. Put the lighters up high, wave around side by side. We gon' light up the sky where the ancestors ride. For the nights that we cry, but tonight we take pride, cause the spirit never dies. We gon' celebrate their lives. If you can hear this, throw your fist in the air. We gon' do this for our family that's here. Yo, this is the hour of celebration for black power. To all the soldiers and scholars, giving their flowers to frontliners like Jabari and the Soul Vibers. They rep Tubman City, they set the bar higher. And them brothers like KT, the arts degree, they gon' carry on the legacy of Dr. Savior. Peace to risen Islam and Brother Ben. With youth like them, we can end our own suffering. Break the curse of Willie Lynch with Charles S. Finch. Professor Small, take us back to the essence. I pay homage to Carlos Muhammad and Dr. Maat, torchbearers that kept it honest. The light is up high, wave around side by side. We gon' light up the sky where the ancestors ride. For the nights that we cry, but tonight we take pride, cause the spirit never dies. So through us, they alive. Put the lighters up high, wave around side by side. We gon' light up the sky where the ancestors ride. For the nights that we cry, but tonight we take pride, cause the spirit never dies. We gon' celebrate their lives. My energy and my thoughts is like John Clark. Still on this marathon like Farrakhan. I got an army of riders taught by Elijah. It's how we start this evolution. Patricia Newton.
All right, peace and love to the Maati and Maati and family in the building. I see you. Thank you so much, family, for tuning in. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the life and legacy of Paul Robeson, an ancestor that we hardly talk about. This month, we talked about Dr. John Henry Clark and Patrice Lumumba and Khalid Muhammad and Dr. Amos Wilson and Dr. King, but we didn't talk about Paul Robeson. And there was a young brother, a young warrior, 24 years old, by the name of Brother Lionel. And he said that he appeared on Signetter's platform before. But this brother, we've been communicating via Facebook. And this brother has a beautiful, beautiful presentation, on Paul Robeson. And I said, brother, you got to come on and you got to come on and present this to the people. And this brother almost brought me to tears, family. I'm getting ready to bring him on. When I brought him on, he said, you know what, Doc, it's an honor to be on your platform. He said, I'm a huge, huge fan, of yours. And he said, it's just an honor. Well, brother Lionel, it's an honor, brother, to have you on the platform, brother. And I look forward to hearing, this presentation that you laid out, about our, great ancestor, Paul Robeson. So you're a young warrior, 24, and you're in this space where you're learning about, our ancestors. You're learning about, our history and our culture, and you're carrying the baton, young brother, young warrior. And so I appreciate your presence, and I appreciate your intellect and your passion for researching our true history. So, brother, welcome to the platform, brother. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I'm a little nervous. I never thought I'll ever be able to do a presentation on here, especially on this magnitude. So I'm happy, and I'm also nervous.
Don't be nervous, brother. Your family, the Maatian family. That's why we call it the Maatian family. You in the presence of family, brother. So don't be nervous. Just be yourself, and you'll be fine. You'll be fine. But being nervous is natural. I get nervous every time I hit the go live button. I don't want to misspeak. I don't, I want to make sure that I articulate myself to the best of my ability. So it's definitely uh, natural to be nervous, but you're in the company of family. So once you start rolling on your presentation, you start going and talking, and you get in your zone. It'll be like you're talking to me or having a conversation with me. But we just appreciate your presence, young warrior, and thank you so much. So, my audience family, make sure that you share this discussion, family. Let's get the views up. Let's get the likes up. Young warrior, I'm getting ready to share your presentation on my screen. Uh-oh.
What's
What
going
happened?
on?
Because I just you gotta share it, brother.
Uh,
So I just tried to add your presentation. There we go.
okay.
Okay. So we see it. You have the floor, brother. I'm getting ready to mute my mic.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Brother Lionel. I've done two presentations on SodNetter before, and this is probably going to be, the last presentation of this magnitude that I'm going to do for a while. First things first, I would like you all to, one of the moderators, to put Julanda Zachary's Cash App in the chat for me. She's one of my favorite people in the world, and she's also one of my favorite students as well. And I'd also like to give a special shout out to my mentor, Robin Oliver Walker, author of the book When We Ruled, and my big brother, Emmanuel Adama, and my mentor, Ibaka Lapizo Bakula. Okay, this is my presentation, The Tallest Tree in Our Forest, Paul Robeson. And the reason why Paul Robeson is often regarded as the tallest tree in our forest is because that was the name of a very famous documentary that the great Afro-Caribbean journalist and interviewer Gil Noble, he called it, he used that title, The Tallest Tree in Our Forest. Here we go. And this is like my favorite picture of Paul Robeson right here. Next slide. This is part 2 of the Unsung Black Heroes lecture series. Part 1 was on Robert F. Williams, the vanguard of the NAACP. Part 2 is Paul Robeson, the tallest tree in our forest. Birth and early life from 1898 to 1915. Paul Robeson was born in Princeton, New Jersey in 1898 to Reverend Drew and Maria Robeson. His father was minister at Witherspoon Street Presbyterian Church, aka the first Presbyterian church for colored people. Reverend Robeson, during this time, he had preached to the members of his flock to believe in black power.
Hold on 1 second, brother
Yes.
Lionel. Go ahead and take your iPad parts out. I'm just going to mute my mic so it's no feedback because the people want to hear you. They're saying you
Oh,
sound very low. So just go ahead and take the iPods out, brother, or your ear parts. I'm sorry, ear parts, not iPods, but your ear parts out. And then what I'll do, brother, yeah, I'll just mute my mic so I won't hear the feedback.
okay.
So now you have to unmute yourself. Yeah, I was trying to grant your request, Shango 67, but you may have messed up the brother's flow. All right, so brother Lionel, just put your ear pods back in, brother, and just keep on going. Just try to speak louder, okay? Yeah, just put the ear pods back in, brother, and just reconnect them again, brother, and just go ahead and just try to speak a little louder, okay? You have to unmute yourself, brother. Okay. So what I would do, brother Lionel, is remember you had it on read only. I would click that same button again to take it off the read only mode. There we go. And do whatever you need to do. If you need to minimize your slides to see yourself so that you can unmute yourself so you can get back to the stream yard. And what I'll do is take your stuff off of the screen. So go up to the top right corner of your slides, minimize your slides, minimize your PowerPoint There you go. Okay, so now we hear you, brother.
Okay, this is cool. Let me go to this slide,
Okay.
and you all, everybody can see this, right? I mean, well, you
We
can
can see it.
see.
We can see it. Go ahead and put back and read the read mode so that it
Okay,
looks like the present mode.
okay,
And you actually do sound a little louder. So yeah, hold it to your mouth your mouth like that so they can hear you, okay?
okay.
All right, brother, go ahead. You have
All
the
right.
floor.
So Reverend Robeson, he had preached to members of his flock to believe in Black Power, and this was a extremely, foreign concept in that time period. Reverend Robeson became somewhat of an activist to the Black people in his community, and he was affectionately called Pastor. Over time, he was kicked out of the church because the church was run by white people, and they wanted the black people to remain silent on social issues. Birth and Early Life Part 2. Paul Robeson's dear mother died being burned to death in a house fire. This traumatic event caused Paul Robeson to lose his mind essentially and black out all of the memories of his mother because, as you know, when it comes to sons, our heart is our mother, you know. Paul was 10 years old when his family moved to a place called Somerville. His father was made pastor at St. Thomas AME Zion Church. That church during that time period had an extensive record of, teaching black self-reliance, black power, etc. While in church, Paul had learned how to sing, where he found out he had a beautiful baritone voice. He discovered he had acting abilities while he was in high school. Most importantly, his father bred into him a strong self esteem. He always told him every day, "You are as good as any white man. Matter of fact, be better." You know that same, you got to work twice as fast, twice as hard as any white man. So we can, succeed, etc. Um, Early Life Part 3 from 1915 to 1919. In his senior year in high school, he takes a competitive statewide exam, and fortunately, he wins a full scholarship to Rutgers University. What's so significant about this is that a lot of black people were not going to school at the time. As to be expected, he was constantly harassed, beaten, called racial slurs. Paul Robeson, during an interview, he talked about a long time ago when he went to audition for a football team. His white teammates at Rutgers, like, literally had jumped him, like, broke his nose, stomped on his hands. They just stomped him out. And so he goes back to his father and he tells his dad, like, "I don't want to keep going to school if I have to go through this." And his father said, "Boy, if you don't stay at Rutgers, you're gonna. I mean, you have to be the inspiration to all black children that's gonna come after you." And so with that, Paul Robeson, he gathered his things, and the next day they tried to jump him again. Where so Paul, this time, he gathered his bearings and he had postured himself like, "Okay, one of y'all come at me again, I'm gonna tackle y'all, and I'm gonna wind up killing one of y'all, on this campus." And so, right when they had found out that Paul was about their business, the coach had blew the whistle and said, "Robeson, you made the team." And Paul Robeson remarks on that incident from then on, he had no trouble after that. It's funny how, you show somebody you ain't no punk, it's like, they stop trying to mess with you. Next slide. Coming Fame, from 1923 to 1927. Over time, Paul begins to distinguish himself on and off the field. Over the course of his illustrious sports career, he wins 14 varsity letters and an All-American citation in football. Um, on on campus, he winds up, singing in the Glee Club, because, but then at the same time, he cannot, go to out of town, concerts. He is winning oratorical awards for 4 years straight at Rutgers universities. Following college, Robeson played 3 years as a pro in 1920 with Hammond, 1921 with Akron, 1922 with Milwaukee. In the American Professional Football League, Robeson was reported to make as much as 500 a game, and he used his money to pay through law school at Columbia University. He obtained his law degree in 1923, where he was, elected to Phi Beta Kappa, was valid Victorian class of 1919. Um, there's his height and weight, 6'3", and he's doing a lot of good things on and off the field. Over time, he uses the money that he, had won, playing professional football, and he moves to New York to go to Columbia University for a law degree. Now, at one point in his life, he was a practicing lawyer, but he was like the only black lawyer at the time, and he he wound up working for a white firm. His boss there wound up telling him that none of our white clients would have you reside over their case and defend them. And even one time with one of his white secretaries, um, he had asked her to do some paperwork for him. And she had wound up saying to him, I don't take orders from N-words, essentially. Next slide. Oh, God, what's going on? Hold on. Coming Fame Part 2 from 1923 to 1927. Um, he winds up moving to Harlem. And while he moves to Harlem, he is already known by the black community there because they already knew about his, professional football career. And he's very, he's welcomed with open arms. During this time period, he begins to play in numerous amateur productions in Harlem. His wife, Islanda Good Robeson, becomes his manager. The lady that he's standing next to in his picture is his wife. In 1922, he makes his Broadway debut in a play called Taboo. Critics recognize him as a future star. He works with the great Irish American playwright Eugene O'Neill in several plays. Paul winds up traveling to England, where he meets the great African American pianist Lawrence Brown, and they, wind up collaborating. And so, what Paul wants to do is that he winds up wanting to record songs with Lawrence Brown, specifically on Negro spirituals. And what he does with a lot of these songs is that he makes the Negro spirituals very powerful and very dignifying to sing. During this time period, he's the third most popular recording artist in the United States in the late 1920s and 1930s. Coming Consciousness, the making of a humanitarian and contradictions, from the year of 1928 to 32. He travels to England, where he meets several famous intellectuals of that day. H.G. Wells, he's the author of The Invisible Man in the Time Machine, and the great Trinidadian Pan-Africanist C.L.R. James. He winds up forming a friendship with the president of the founding father of Kenya, Jomo Kenyatta. Even though that Paul and his wife are very famous, they're still treated as any other black person. Um, while while talking to the local black population in England, he becomes very conscious of Pan Africanism. He managed to study at the School of Oriental and African Studies and becomes fluent in several languages. For some reason, it is a controversy because a lot of historians do not know how many languages Paul Robeson could speak. Some say 5, some say 10. He sang in a great many. But there was an interview that I had found of Paul where he had said that if he had been left to his own devices, he would have been a professor at a small university on the study of languages. So what that tells me is that he probably spoke maybe more than 5 languages. During this time period, he is continuing to play in several stage productions. He manages to play Othello, where he has numerous affairs with many white women, such as his young co-star Peggy Ashcroft, and another white actress, Yolanda Jackson. This is Paul Robeson in Othello with this is Peggy Ashcroft right here. According to his friends, Yolanda Jackson was the love of his life. Uh, Next slide. This is Yolanda Jackson right here. And this is his leading lady in Othello at the time, Peggy Ashcroft. Coming Consciousness, The Making of a Humanitarian and Contradictions from 2032. Keep in mind, Paul Robeson is still making a great living performing, being a Renaissance man. He starts to get introduced in the film, and a lot of these roles that he was playing had catapulted him to being the first black superstar. He works extensively with the African American film director Oscar Micheaux. He's the first African American film director. And a lot of the roles that he played while he was like in England were very stereotypical in nature that justified colonialism. In 1928, he began to know the plight of the Welsh coal miners in London. He started to align himself with the working class people, and the most interesting thing was that he didn't learn the struggle with the tea drinkers. He was with them actually learning about their struggles. And let me explain what tea drinker means. Tea drinker was a phrase that Vladimir Lenin had came up with, where it meant that back before the days of the Russian Revolution, there were a lot of intellectuals who would just debate all day. And they would like seriously get into it and not talk to each other. It was just really just having fruitless debates trying to figure out who's smarter than one another. Just fruitless. Paul Robeson, he remarked, England was where he got his education. He learned something that many black Marxists today cannot understand, was that he had learned that he was working class as well as black. During this time period, he was part of a massive strike with the Welsh coal miners by organizing with several artists to bring a freight car of food, and he was with them from day in and day out. He was with them. The role of the artist. The artist must take sides. He must elect to fight for freedom or for slavery. I have made my choice. I have no alternative. Art as a weapon. The fight against fascism in Spain and the Soviet Union years from 1937 to 1939. Paul Robeson will forever be associated with the song Old Man River. During this time, he sacrificed his career for revolutionary suicide. The song Old Man River was originally kind of demoralizing, but over time he began to change the lyrics to make it sound very revolutionary. He is singing for numerous causes, such as being an advocate for the Spanish Republicans fighting against the fascist nationalist party in Spain led by Franco. Personally, my favorite political song of his was Four Insurgent Generals talking about fighting against fascism in Europe. When he made it to the front, he sang wherever he could, hospitals, in front of soldiers to raise morale. During this time period, he winds up making it to Russia, where he is welcomed by Joseph Stalin. He believed that the Soviet Union was a great home for black people, but due to the coming war, he decided that he and his family should go back home. This is just the lyrics, and I'm just going to say a little bit of it. The foreign surgeon generals, the foreign surgeon generals, um, they'll all be hanging, they'll all be hanging. So he was talking about several of the fascist leaders that were rising during the 1940s, and this was the type of song that he was singing to, raise morale. Like, this is what's gonna happen. Um, Art as a Weapon, Part Two. Coming home, he did the very thing that he knew best. The thing he did was sing. He still sang about the plight of the working class in America. He came back with a bang. He convinced many of his friends within the industry to help him with the project. The project was called The Ballot for America for CBS. It was a very patriotic song talking about the history of America. And even when any of you all choose to listen to the song, it will honestly like make you cry, and it would make you proud to be an American. The radio program was so good that it got a standing ovation. Art as a Weapon, Part 3, the World War II years. He saw something that many of the black intelligentsia of today or yesterday did not see, was that he was still black and working class. Paul Robeson brilliantly joined hands with the white establishment by selling war bonds, performing for the U.S. Army, the Russian Army. He saw the intersection between race and class in America. He preached trade unionism wherever he went. Over time, Paul began to play Othello again. Paul Robeson, at this time in his life, he still loved white women. He had a long affair with his leading lady, the great Uta Hagen. Paul Robeson's performance as Othello is the standard. He had an estimate of 296 performances, the longest run of any Shakespearean play to date. He believed that the white working class should form an alliance with the black underclass because neither, as he said, could advance without the other. I think that was brilliant of him to think about at that time period. He's still protesting to further the cause to get into the rank and file struggle of the workers everywhere and black people as well. He became the chief spokesman for an organization called the American Crusade Against Lynching. He has an infamous standoff with President Truman over the Riot Act because African Americans were constantly being lynched, constantly being terrorized, not only in their uniform, but also all over America. He said, well, if you, the government, cannot protect us, we might as well protect ourselves. Paul Robeson at this time period had used his art to try to gain support for the very progressive politician Henry Wallace. In the 1940s, he is the most famous black man in the world. This is Uta Hagen. And this is Uta Hagen on her relationship with Paul Robeson. We had a 3-year relationship. It started rather early in the run. It was absolutely instigated by him. It startled me so that it shattered my world, and I went hook, line, and sinker. In Boston, in a hotel, we got on the elevator, and a woman got on, took one look at the two of us, my arm through his, and hacked up and spit me in the face. That was almost to be expected in the 40s, but I had a feeling that I was learning something every day. But the end result, I didn't really see it till 10 years later. as I had saw what we had done had influenced things, that things were changing. This is another picture of Paul Robeson and Uta Hagen in Othello. This is probably like my favorite picture of the two of them together. Here's another picture with the two of them together. Another picture with the two of them together. This is Paul Robeson and Henry Wallace. The McCarthy era and the betrayal of the NAACP Part 1. Fascism, by like 1945, fascism has been beaten back. Communism has been declared an enemy of the free world. Rabid anti-communists and white supremacists initiate a smear campaign against Robeson. Many tour dates and speaking arrangements are canceled. He must go into exile into Europe for work. In April, he goes to Paris to address the Congress of the World's Partisans of Peace. He made a statement at the conference saying that it was inconceivable that black Americans would fight for a country that had kept them in bondage for centuries against the country, i.e. the Soviet Union, who had raised its minority population to full citizenship in one generation. He also sang the song Joe Hill in protest. This is Paul Robeson and the great W.B. Du Bois at the Congress of the Partisans World of Peace. That's like one of my favorite pictures. This is the Joe Hill lyrics. From San Diego up to Maine, in every mine and mill where common men defend their rights, it's there you'd find Joe Hill. Like that song it's a morale booster, and I think it's the song of the working class. McCarthy era and the betrayal of the NAACP Part 2. Due to this statement, the right had used his words to the best of their ability to further smear Paul Robeson's image. Afterwards, he began to have serious health problems. Many of the members of the so-called white liberal press who had once held him as a hero turned on him as a result. Civil rights leaders didn't even try to investigate what he said either. One of the biggest problems with the established black leadership is their inability to not only speak on war and peace, but to also bring our struggles to the international stage. The NAACP had issued a statement saying, "We do not believe that Paul Robeson speaks for the overwhelmingly majority of black people in this country." Roy Wilkins, who was head of the NAACP, and I'm quoting Paul Robeson Jr., had consciously and deliberately joined J. Edgar Hoover in the right wing by saying, "We will fight loyally for this country no matter how many of us they lynch." And I'm going to also quote Gerald Horne as well real fast. Gerald Horne tells us that when you look at our history in terms of like slave rebellions or any other like social issue concerning African Americans, there are a lot of times Africans who want to solidify their own, protect their own class, to stay famous. And a lot of these, if you look at even a lot of the slave rebellions in our history, they were always thwarted by another African. That's something that we have to grapple with. Whenever there's like progressive stuff going on, there's always another African that's bringing stuff down. This is Roy Wilkins. I want everyone to take a good look at this man. The McCarthy era and the betrayal of NAACP Part 3. The NAACP had actually conspired with the State Department. They wrote scathing articles in the Crisis magazine, which was the official organ of NAACP under a pseudonym. And they called this article Paul Robeson Lost Shepherd, talking about how Paul Robeson was tricked by the communists and in the sense that he was a traitor to his people. And not only did they do that, they sent those articles all over Africa trying to mess up his image down in Africa, trying to vilify Paul Robeson. They called him a traitor to his race. He goes back to Moscow. He wanted to see his friend Itzik Pfeffer, who was a Jewish intellectual who who sought refuge in the Soviet Union, and but unfortunately he was a victim of Joseph Stalin's purges. And during this time period, Joseph Stalin was trying to make a final problem and trying to actually like destroy the Jewish population in Russia. Um, During this time period, he managed to actually talk to Itzik Pfeffer. And Itzik Pfeffer, when they were in the room together, Itzik Pfeffer had alerted to him due to sign language that this room was bugged. And if you say anything crazy, we're both dead. And so he basically was like, "Is there anything I can do?" And he kind of he did that sign language where he cuts his head off, like cuts his head off, meaning like we're dead, etc. And so Paul Robeson, he performed in a very famous Russian hall. I can't pronounce the name, sadly. And he mentioned his friend Itzik Pfeffer. And so there was a huge gasp in the crowd because Itzik Pfeffer was declared by the Stalinist regime a missing person. For the encore, he sung the song of the Warsaw Ghetto Resistance. Never say that you have reached the very end. With leaden skies a bitter future may portend. For sure the hour for which we yearn will yet arrive, and our marching steps and thunder will survive. And to be honest, see, many intellectuals today tend to try to label Paul Robeson as a Stalinist as a way to try to destroy his legacy. But the fact that he sang the Warsaw Ghetto Resistance song in Yiddish in front of Joseph Stalin in the regime, it honestly tells you right then and there that Paul Robeson wasn't no Stalinist. He showed that to the world. He winds up going back home. Eventually, this is a quote that Paul Robeson had said during the Rockland Palace rally in Harlem in 1949. And we must have the courage to shout at the top of our voices about our injustices, and we must lay the blame where it belongs and where it has belonged for over 300 years of slavery and continuous misery right here on our own doorstep. We do not want to die in vain anymore on foreign battlefields. That kind of sounds like Muhammad Ali, don't it? Because Muhammad Ali, he protested against, the Vietnam War, and he basically said the same thing Paul said. So, Paul was he was on a different level than most at the time. McCarthyism Part 2. Jackie Robinson was told to testify against Paul Robeson, which he did. Paul Robeson had wrote a letter to Jackie Robinson telling him what he had said in Paris, that it's inconceivable that black Americans would fight against the Soviet Union. It was getting like really hot during the McCarthy period. Paul Robeson had a press conference saying to the reporters, "If you're out to get me to attack Jackie Robinson, wrong. That's what they want us to do, putting one against the other." The Urban League had arranged for Robinson to go to Washington, D.C. Jackie Robinson wrote in his autobiography saying that if I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't have done it. But Paul, to be honest, he didn't blame Jackie Robinson because he had felt that he was under tremendous pressure at the time. He gives a concert. Paul Robeson gives a concert with his friend Pete Seeger to raise money for the Civil Rights Congress to charge the United States with genocide. During this concert, white supremacists tried to murder him and others who were protecting Paul while he was giving the concert. Further investigations found two snipers' nests. He barely escaped. During this time, Paul became very ill and he was subpoenaed to defend himself. He defended himself very well. One of the most tragic quotes that came about when Paul Robeson was defending himself, they said, Paul, if you hate America so much, why don't you just move to the Soviet Union? And Paul said, my ancestors built this country and I want a part of it just like you. Is that clear? Josh White, a great black blues singer who was mentored by Paul Robeson, was forced to tell him that he had to testify. And Josh, he broke down crying because Paul always mentored him, but Paul, he didn't blame him for it. His friends during that time period had remarked that during the McCarthy period, Paul would honestly tell a lot of his friends, I don't think it's cool for you to start hanging out with me because I don't want them to make you I don't want them to put you under surveillance like they're doing me. So Paul, he honestly cared about his friends. This is Paul Robeson handing We Charge Genocide to the UN Secretary of New York. Paul Robeson erased. The FBI began to erase him from history. The FBI also kept record stores from playing and selling his music. His income is drastically diminished. During this time period, he had 2 FBI agents following him every day. The FBI went through his mail. The unions that he had helped create in the past had cut their ties with him. The black press during this time period didn't want anything to do with him either. In 1950, the government kept his passport to keep him from going abroad. The reason the State Department said they took his passport away was because he was a Pan-Africanist. The U.S. was honestly trying to make him have a stroke and die. His own alma mater, Rutgers, severs ties with him. The Welsh coal miners had sent him invitations every year to sing for them and protested in his support, and they called it Let Paul Robeson Sing. Prime Minister Nehru, Prime Minister of India at the time, rallied for his support. Also, the U.S. wanted him to take an anti-communist oath so he could get his passport back, and Paul, he said, I'm not going to do it. In 1958, the Supreme Court rules that the State Department cannot seize your passport for political reasons. He is now able to do what he does best, which is to sing again. In June of 1958, he begins to sell out tickets for Carnegie Hall. Also, Paul Robeson still spoke for the rights of black people and workers everywhere. Also, Nikita Khrushchev gave him shelter so he could go back to the Soviet Union. He was able to travel to all the countries he wasn't allowed to go to. He travels to Australia to speak for the Aboriginal population. In the spring of 1961, Robeson arranged a trip to Havana to meet Fidel Castro and Che Guevara. The CIA found out about it. During an uncharacteristically wild party in his Moscow hotel room, Robeson locked himself in his bedroom and attempted suicide by cutting his wrists. 3 days later, under Soviet medical care, he told his son he had traveled to Moscow at the news that he felt extreme paranoia. He thought the walls in the room were moving in on him, and overcome with the powerful sense of emptiness and depression, he tried to take his own life. Further health problems and continued government surveillance. Paul Jr. had discovered evidence that he was a victim of MK Ultra. He said that he said that 3 doctors that were treating Paul Robeson in London and New York had been CIA contractors, which is This is something that's very fascinating. There is no evidence of mental illness amongst the Robesons whatsoever. He goes back to London and he begins to deteriorate health wise. He winds up being admitted to a psychiatric hospital. During his treatment at the Priory Hospital, Robeson is being monitored by the British MI5. Both British and American intelligence services were aware of Robeson's suicidal state of mind. An FBI memo described Robeson's debilitated condition, remarking that his death would be much publicized and he would be used for communist propaganda, necessitating continued government surveillance. Numerous memos advised that Robeson should be denied passport renewal, an obstacle that was to likely further jeopardize his recovery process. They did not originally consult the Soviet doctors who had treated him. They subjected him to electroshock therapy within 36 hours of him being admitted, in which he endured 54 electroshock treatments, which is outrageous then and now. Further decline and seclusion. Robeson was contacted by both Bayard Rustin and James Farmer about the possibility of becoming involved with the mainstream civil rights movement. Because of Rustin's past anti-communist stances, Robeson declined to meet with him. Robeson eventually met with Farmer, but he was asked to denounce communism in the Soviet Union in order to assume a place in the mainstream. Robeson adamantly declined. In 1963, Robeson returned to the United States, and for the remainder of his life, he lived mainly in seclusion. He momentarily assumed a role in the civil rights movement, making a few major public appearances before falling seriously ill during a tour. Double pneumonia, and a kidney blockage in 1965 nearly killed him. Also, keep in mind during this time period, his wife is Londa. She had passed away, so he's basically like, his body is kind of broken. I mean, he's kind of done everything he could at this point. He's depressed. He's broke. You know, he's hurt now. This is his death on January 23rd, 1976, following complications of a stroke. Robeson died in Philadelphia at the age of 77. He lay in state in Harlem, and his funeral was held at his brother Ben's parsonage at Mother Zion AME Zion Church, where Bishop J. Clinton Hoggart performed the eulogy. His 12 pallbearers included Harry Belafonte and Fritz Pollard. He was interred in the Ferncliff Cemetery in Hartsdale, New York. His legacy, Paul Robeson, in my opinion, was honestly the greatest African American activist we have ever had. He was an anti-colonialist. He was one of the most prominent African American activists that managed to talk about race and class in the same breath. He knew about theory and practice. He committed revolutionary suicide for the world. And most importantly, he would do the same thing if he was alive today. No changes. He was the first leader to successfully internationalize the black struggle globally. And he used his art to bring awareness to many causes. And this is a quote from Dr. Gerald Horne. The wisest amongst us has always tried to internationalize our struggle. And that picture right there is like one of my other favorite pictures of Paul, where he's smiling and he's very powerful. This is the bibliography and other references. Paul Robeson, Here I Stand documentary that came out in 1999. The Undiscovered Paul Robeson, Quest for Freedom, 1939 to 1976. Paul Robeson Speaks, Writing Speeches, Interviews from 1918 to 1974. Paul Robeson, Here I Stand, the autobiography. The Undiscovered Paul Robeson, the early years from 1898 to 1939. Sterling Stuckey's Slave Culture, Nationalist Theory, and the Foundations of Black America. And Sterling Stuckey's I Want to Be an African, Paul Robeson and the Ends of Nationalist Theory and Practice from the years of 1914 and 1945. And that's the end of my presentation.
Man, I have to let me I'm just muted you because I hear that feedback, brother. But let me drop a bomb for you, brother. Oh my goodness. Family, 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 family. Give a virtual applause in the chat. Just drop a virtual applause for this young warrior, brother Lionel. Please drop a virtual applause or some fire symbols, family, for this young warrior, 24 years old, 24 years old, who just gave us about a 45-minute to 50-minute presentation on one of our great ancestors, Paul Robeson. That's why I always tell young people, don't think that you don't have anything to offer. Because just because we're older, don't mean that we can't sit down and learn from our youth. Ashe? Because I'm gonna tell you something, family. I sat down here and I listened to this young warrior, and I learned a great deal about Paul Robeson that I did not know before. I knew the basic surface information. I had a basic level understanding of this great ancestor. So, young warrior, I want to say to you that I salute you and that I thank you for expanding my knowledge base tonight, expanding the knowledge base of the people who are listening to you live, young warrior, and for the people who will be listening to this in the archives. You literally expanded our knowledge base about this great ancestor. You helped me understand what made him. Because when I brought on Dr. Takai Kilimanjaro a long time ago, he said to me, he said, the times make the man. So we look at these people and we have to realize they were a product of their time. They were a product of their environment. So what you did was help me understand the environment that shaped Paul Robeson. You took us all the way back to his parents, right? His father, who was a minister. And you said that his father would use his pulpit to talk about Black issues and Black empowerment, and how his father instilled in him that he's even greater than what they tell him, and gave him his self-esteem, right? Gave him his political position. And that his father, when he wanted to leave Rutgers, his father said, no, you're going to stay over there, because his father understood, wait a minute, you got to think of the future. There are people who are coming after you. And so his father put that stuff in him. And so all of his different experience that he had from being at Rutgers and and playing on the football team, to being a lawyer, getting his law degree, right? And the different racism that he experienced during that time period, right? And how he moved to Harlem. So when you mentioned Harlem, I started thinking about, shout out to Baba Amin and the Uhuru Academy, and my son Jalen, who's studying the Harlem Renaissance. And so during that time, he moved to Harlem, and Harlem was like the mecca for Black people, and how he got involved in stage plays and how he could sing. Now, one thing, brother, that caught me that you said, and I'm just giving you my feedback, on what I heard. You had mentioned how when he started doing these plays, how he got caught up with these white women. And I saw how you labeled it, contradictions. He started touring. He got caught up. Let me go, bro. Let me finish going, brother. So he got caught up with these white women. So you labeled it, his contradictions. And shout out to Dr. Tareen Wright. We just had a discussion on the contradictions, the internal contradictions of Black leaders and Black organizations. So he had what Dr. Umar Johnson would call the snow bunny crisis. He suffered from the snow bunny crisis. And if you look at him, he was a dark complected man. So I can only imagine his self-esteem. You understand? And just that whole mentality. So his, thinking about the colorism that he suffered from, I'm pretty sure, I know he suffered from colorism, right? And how that colorism, how that internalized racism played on his preference, right? On what he preferred, right? And then and also understanding that, white women were the trophy. They were depicted as the standard of beauty, the standard of success. And so I could see how he became, a victim to that. And I saw that, and I noticed that he in these some of these roles that he played in these plays, some of the roles that he took on. I don't know if it was roles of films. I want you to correct me. Was it roles of films that showed him in relationships with various white women? Were those plays or were those films, Warrior?
Those were plays. It was he played Othello with Peggy Ashcroft. I think in the early 20s, and then the second time it was with Uta Hagen.
Okay. And so that's one thing, young warrior, and I'm gonna mute you to die, to kill off this feedback, but to minimize the feedback. But what I did notice, I didn't like him in those roles, and let me tell you why. Because it gave credence to the idea that black women were that black men sought after white women. Because remember, that was the myth, right? That if you look at Birth of a Nation, right, and other in other novels and films back then, they were pushing this narrative that black men were sexual predators and that black men were always seeking white women. So when he took on the role, showing him in relationships with various white women, it kind of gives credence to that idea that black men chase after white women. So I didn't particularly like hearing about. Well, I mean, I'm glad you told me, but that part kind of, it was troublesome. It was troublesome to me because again, it feeds that narrative. And so anyway, that him going abroad and becoming a Pan-Africanist and receiving his education in England and his ability to speak multiple languages, and all of his activist work and how he used, you said, art as a weapon. He used art as a way to bring attention to our struggle. And like you said, he took it on the international stage. Young warrior, when I say I was listening to you, and I learned a great deal from you. Now I want to show this last slide that you had up. Show the last slide that you had up, young warrior, of his legacy. And while you're showing me that, young warrior, also, I didn't know that Jackie Robinson was as much as a sellout as he was. Just go to the slide on his legacy. So I learned about Jackie Robinson and how he didn't testify against Paul Robeson. So learn some things, about Jackie Robinson, but I'm not surprised. And also, young warrior, when you were talking, you mentioned like the strategies that the white folks used. And it seems like, a zebra just never changes its stripes. And that's why it is imperative, family, that we study our history so we won't fall a victim to their strategies. So what did they do? They smeared this, they assassinated his character. Then the NAACP said, oh, no. Everybody started backing off. The black press started backing off. And I'm thinking, when will black people learn? These strategies, this divide and conquer tactic that they use. So as soon as they started smearing his name and his reputation and his character, then the black folks started backing up. I don't want no parts. I don't want no parts. We always fall a victim to the strategies that they use to keep us to keep us separated. And so you highlighted those strategies, in your presentation. I also love, in looking at your legacy slide, where you talked about how he managed to talk about the intersectionality, right, of race and class. You have some pro-blacks will say, hey, I'm not concerned with intersectionality. I'm just focusing on black. You don't even have a clue how race impacts class, right? How your race literally you need to repeat, folks, read the book, The Hidden Cost of Being an African American by Thomas Shapiro. Please read the book, The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein. And you'll see how race plays a role in your daggone class. So to act like intersectionality does not exist, it absolutely does. Even when Dr. Tareen Wright and I were talking about women in the struggle, and how black women, how we possess two marginalized identities. First being labeled black, and then also being black women. There is intersectionality. And so we can't deny that. And so anyway, I love that you brought up that the fact that he was one of the most prominent African-American activists that actually talked about that, right? Race and class. Okay. It said he knew about theory and practice, and you said he committed revolutionary suicide. That was powerful. And how he it says internationalized the struggle for black people globally. And he used his art, right, to bring attention to what was happening. I wish black folks today would use their art. And shout out to the ones who do, like Sister Effie. There's a young brother out in Detroit who actually used art, right, to convey the struggle, to convey the black struggle. So shout out to them brothers and sisters. Shout out to all of my brothers and sisters who are hip hop artists who use their art to convey, the black struggle. But a lot of brothers and sisters aren't using their art for good nowadays. If you listen to the so-called rap music, right, they're not using art to empower black people or to promote knowledge of self or to bring awareness of black issues in America. They're using it to promote death and destruction. So I think that Paul Robeson was a beautiful example of how we should be using art to further ourselves, to heal ourselves, free ourselves, and further ourselves. Ashe. So anyway, family, thank you so much for tuning in. Young warrior, do you have any closing words to the listening audience?
Um, I would like to say, like, going back to what you said about him having the like, like the snow bunny crisis and stuff. I can remember when I had played Othello in high school, and me and my leading lady, we kind of like fell like in love essentially. But my friends had, stopped us, and they had said to me like, bro, you can't be, you can't be operating like that. Like, you're the standard for us. So I understand why he fell for both of his leading ladies like that, because that's a very intense, role. And also, what's another thing? I think that a lot, and here's one reason why I wanted to do the whole series on Paul Robeson, was because a lot of people tend to have a very surface level view of the civil rights movement.
Yeah, very true.
Like, if you go YouTube, the first thing people will bring up is like Malcolm X and Dr. King, like they were the only two people that were doing something, which that's not true.
No, not at all.
And what's another thing I want to bring up as well? Like, um, also, the NAACP during the whole purge period, they had kicked out its founding member W.E.B. Du Bois because in 1948 he wanted to be a spokes. He wanted to have the NAACP start to talk about international affairs. But the NAACP was like, oh, no, we're not doing that. We're gonna make a deal with the devil and join the right, and we're gonna just kick you out. And they didn't just do that to him. They did that to Paul. They did that to Robert F. Williams, the author of Negroes with Guns. Are you familiar with Negroes with Guns?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Roy Wilkins had kicked him out too
I
because
believe it.
the NAACP, they didn't like that Robert F. Williams wanted black people to not only do peaceful protests, but to also defend themselves at the same time. So we, I mean, like, but Paul, he isn't talked about, and thank you for giving me the platform. Um, I never thought that I would ever be on here, and thank you so very much.
Well, thank you, young warrior. I appreciate that. Sister Juju is definitely in the building supporting you. And so she's in the building. But young warrior, I appreciate you. I thank you. So I want to say to you, Dua, Asante Sana, Adupe. Thank you, young warrior, for taking time out of your schedule to be with my listeners and I tonight. So, young warrior, we will be in touch with each other, okay? All right, brother. Peace and love. Peace. Family, that was a powerful, powerful bill, family. Share this discussion, thumb up this discussion. You know the way the YouTube algorithm works. The more you engage it, the more you engage, you like it, you comment, it begins to show up on feeds. Ashe. Family, also join me for Black History Month, a Black History Month celebration on February the 19th, okay, at the St. Matthew's Church, 5401 Lock Raven Boulevard. It's going to be off the chain, family. I've been to these Black History Month celebrations by INSA African Creations by Sister Marjorie Nicole. Okay, and I'm telling you, the Black History Month, her Black History Month celebrations are off the chain. Her vendor marketplace is off the chain. So make sure you bring your Ducats family and come on out. I'm actually going to give a short lecture on Black history and how Black history is Black history is world history. Ashe. Because wherever we are in the world, we make history. Ashe. So Black history is world history. And so I'll be talking about that or dealing with that topic on February the 19th. And I also will be addressing what's going on and how the efforts, okay, that are being made to erase Black history. They want to water it down, either water it down, distort it, or omit it altogether. And so I'm going to be having that conversation as well, and charge our people with making sure we preserve Black history, but not only preserve it, but preserve the integrity of our history, and to make sure that we teach it to our babies. And so I'm going to be having that conversation during my particular lecture. I don't know how long she's going to give me, but I hope that she gives me at least about 30 to 45 minutes to rock out. So family, make sure that your seat, make sure your behind is in the building on February the 19th, especially if you're in the DMV area, family. Make sure that you come on out. Also, family, let me give you another one. Not this one. Not this one. Hold on. Here we go. You know, I don't have nothing to hide from you all. I show it all. Also, family, on Mother's Day, make sure that you join us for the MOM Mother's Day luncheon. So MOM, missing our mothers, our grandmothers, and our aunties. All right. So I know that some of you lost your mom, and I don't want to say lost your mom, your grandmother, and your aunties have transitioned, right? Come on out to this Mother's Day's luncheon. We're going to celebrate their legacy. We're going to celebrate them and honor them. Let's love on each other and let's go through this together. Because typically when Mother's Day come around, you know how people kind of, if your mom or your grandma, your auntie transition, we put up post on social media and we're feeling some type of way, thinking about our moms, thinking about our grandmothers, thinking about our aunties. Well, you don't have to sulk by yourself, okay? And it's not going to be a sulking event, but I'm just saying you don't have to stay in that, right? You don't have to live in that and stay in that. Come on out to the luncheon, okay? It's going to be a beautiful luncheon, catered. I'm telling you, mimosas, DJ, African drumming and dance. We're going to have an ancestral shrine where you come in, family, and bring something of your mom or your grandma and your auntie, put it on the shrine. We're going to feed it. We're going to pour libations. We're going to shout, cry, laugh, hug on each other. Come on out, family. General admission is $75. VIP tickets is $100 for reserved seating. It says sangria and swag bag, family. It's going to be on May the 14th from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. at the St. Matthew's Church, 5401 Lock Raven Boulevard. Family, if you are in the DMV area, and even if you aren't, make sure, family, that you're in the building. Ashe? Ashe. And so thank you so much for coming out, family. You know, I gotta put my outro on, and I think what I'm going to go with, and I should have had this ready, so forgive me, family. I think what I'm gonna go with is the libation song. I'm telling you, it's something about that. No, you know what? I'm gonna go with truth to power talk. I'm gonna do the truth to power talk because I feel like the young warrior tonight, I feel like he spoke a lot of truth to power. And so I think that it would be sufficient, right? It would be sufficient to go out with the truth to power talk theme song. And you know, that's my theme song. Shout out to Armaday the Apostle. But peace and love, family. I will be live again. But you know, I don't like coming on and just having frivolous discussions, right? I like coming on and having, you know, thought provoking discussions with you. So I got to think of another topic, but I'll be live probably on Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay, Thursday, what's the day? Tomorrow's Tuesday. Maybe tomorrow. I may go live tomorrow. All right, but it'll be either Tuesday or Thursday, family. So make sure that you subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell so that whenever I go live, you will be notified. Make sure you share the family. Sorry, make sure you share the show, family. Peace and Black power.
Boys in the mind, put the woke back to sleep, keep the deaf, dumb, and blind. Reparations now, separation now. Cause every time we rise, they make laws to keep us down. How many children have to die, huh? To see they don't want us around, they left the babe inside our blood, future buried in the ground. Still we rise, we burst through the flames of the fire. Warrior spirit, make the devil retire. Elijah Farrakhan, they expose all the liars. Time to come together, build our own empire. You can't fool me with the propaganda. The devil used to bruise me with a stop and slander. Can't confuse me now, we got the answers. Masked up, red, black, green, bandanas. Yo, it's just the path that we chose. Black rebellious soul is more than my clothes. This the truth, the power talk. Front line, about time, final hour thoughts. You can't fool me with the propaganda.